of the things that Nike does extremely well is they create the experience of the drop. From a business perspective, why does Nike's drop feel like an event and not just something that happens?
I think demand and being able to have a brand where you can drive demand, whether it's artificial or real, is essentially gold. And if you think about Nike, if you go anywhere in the world, there is this American sneaker company on the feet of people everywhere. And I think that story of that brand and how they started is the magic.
Hey everyone, I want to welcome you to this week's edition of Confessions of a CX Executive. I have a special guest for you today. But before we get into that, once again, my name's JP Dumas. As you know, I've spent more than 25 years elevating sales performance, reducing churn, and optimizing the customer experience at a lot of big companies you may have heard of. And now, as president and CEO of CX and Growth Strategies, I'm working with small and mid-sized businesses to help them achieve similar results. But before we jump into it today, I want to introduce my guest. This is Dipesh Patel. He is a seasoned entrepreneur. He is a tech enthusiast. More importantly, has a great background in digital experiences. And more importantly, he's fluent in sneakers. And so what we're going to talk to you today are about a few things that Nike does a little bit differently that you might be able to steal and elevate your brand as well. So before we get into that, Dipesh, anything you'd like to share with our group?
Yeah, well, I appreciate you having me on the show. And I think one of the really cool things about reconnecting with you has been reconnecting on sneakers. We trade text messages every now and then on pictures of our latest pickups and have good times on that. And I think even my new business focused on all things AI all the time. It's got a pretty good intersection with sneakers and the Nike products out there today.
That is awesome. Now, for our audience, you never forget your first pair of sneakers. And for me, I never forgot my first pair of Jordans. But it's really about the brand of Nike. See, I remember Jordan in '84 in the Olympics. We're going back a little bit. We all know the famous story about how he didn't want to really take the meeting, but his mother encouraged him. But it goes way beyond that. We're talking back to Blue Ribbon Sports. We're talking about the infamous story of the waffle iron and how they created the first sole imprint. But more importantly, we're talking about how has this iconic brand over the past 50 years generated this sort of loyalty? And then what are the top 5 things that you can do as a business? But before we jump into that, I do want to ask you some specific questions to kind of warm things up a little bit. So
Sure.
How did you fall in love with sneakers and particularly Nikes?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, JP. I mean, I think Nike's got a really good story, and you alluded to some of this here. If anybody watching this is a sneakerhead, mandatory reading should be Shoe Dog. Really good book by Phil Knight. It's about more than sneakers and the building of Nike. It's about his life, and it's his kid. It's just a really good book. I highly recommend it. How I kind of fell in love with Nike specifically is an interesting story. I was just telling one of our clients today, as a CIO of a multi-billion-dollar company. I'm in their office today, and I saw him wearing some ones. He was wearing some low J's, and this may sound a little HR violation-ish, but he was like a older white guy. I was like, what are you into sneakers? Like, what's going on here? And he's like, yeah, what do you mean? So he told me the whole story about how he got into them. And he's like, what about you? I'm like, well, my story is not as good as yours. Like when I grew up, we didn't grow up with much. And I think JP, you and I connected on this, talked about this growing up.
Absolutely.
Like we didn't have money for J's and sneakers and all the good things. And I vividly remember the story. And I just told it an hour ago when I was talking to the CIO. And I said, I remember vividly, I grew up in Houston, Texas, in this suburb called Alief, and we didn't have much. And my mom took me to Academy to buy a pair of Air Maxes. And now we call them Air Max 90s, but they were just the Air Maxes back then because it was 1994 or whatever it was, 1993. And we had no money. I remember they were $59.99. So they were on sale, and my mom went and bought them. We got home. My dad got home from work, and he was pissed because he was like, this is $59 we don't have. So he made us return them. So I'm like crying, throwing a fit and tantrum, typical kid that wants something they can't have. And I'm a big believer that a lot of our, future selves are formed between the ages of kind of like 4 and 10. There's a bunch of stuff you can read about neuroscience and how that works. But I'm like, that's interesting because today I don't know how old I am. I was born in 1979. So however old that makes me, I have probably over 400 pairs of J's and other shoes in addition to that are sitting in boxes. So that's my story about how I fell in love with Nikes. I think it's more around the story of passion and hunger and not being able to have something and driving that into motivation to get what you want.
Absolutely. No, that's a great story. And it mirrors so much of what many of us have is that maybe that first pair wasn't the originals, but maybe it was a retro because now we could get it. So I want to start off with topic number one. One of the things that Nike does extremely well is they create the experience of the drop. And what I mean by drop is what we talk about in a lot of businesses, the product launch, the anticipation, the buildup. They have, it's this big thing. So from a business perspective, why does Nike's drop feel like an event and not just something that happens?
Yeah, I mean, I think demand and being able to have a brand where you can drive demand, whether it's artificial or real, is essentially gold, right? That brand now has that moat. I think you hear Warren Buffett often talk about, what's the moat that a business has? And if you think about Nike, I don't remember the exact year it was formed, but it's in the last like 60, 70 years. If you go anywhere in the world, there is this American sneaker company on the feet of people everywhere, right? And I think that story of that brand and how they started is just one of those things that created a moat that's insane when you think about it. Like, how did that happen? That journey and that story is it's demand, right? And that demand and that story gets created further when you create. Again, I'm going to say the word artificial demand. I don't know if it is or not, but I anticipate or I believe they can create as many of these shoes as they want. Like, there's no reason that Travis Scott's there's only 1,000 of them, right? Or like the latest off-white J's, there's only a few of them. They could create more and they cost them probably $5 to make or whatever it is. But that story and that demand they create is the magic. And I think there's plenty of brands that do it really well. I'm not saying Nike's the only one. They're exceptional, especially with the digital stuff they put out lately. But if you think of, I think my wife always talks about this handbag. I don't know if it's Hermes or one of these fancy bags where you got to get on some list and you have to buy a few of them other stuff before you can get the right to buy one or something. And I'm like, that's such a similar kind of model where it's like, oh, these handbags that women are so much going after and they cost like God knows how much they are. I'm not even familiar, but
Yeah,
they
yeah.
create this demand. I think that's the story. It's like you got to create a story around your brand and the demand, and you're exclusive and you're hard to get, and people want it.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe free product placement, but I won't say it now because I think they do pretty well on their own. But so how does a company replicate that feeling? I mean, so many businesses have, product releases and drops and things of that nature. How do they build this sort of thing? If I'm looking at an entrepreneur, I'm looking at a company is up and coming or whatnot, or even more established ones, how do you create that feeling?
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's the feeling, right? The actual product, like you said, is rubber and some shoelaces and whatever, some color. The feeling is what you got to create. Now, that's what those ads do that you watch on Nike. That's what the pictures do. That's what the athletes do that are sponsored. They give you a feeling, right? When the reason I'm into Jordans is like I grew up in the '90s and I'm a huge Jordan fan, the basketball player. Now, that one ad they had, if we could all be like Mike or whatever, it's like essentially that's what they did, right? It's like the
Right.
feeling they put on you was that if you put on those shoes, you're going to play basketball better and you're going to feel cooler, right? Now we got corporate executives wearing these shoes because it's just the in factor and thing. It's not so much with that nostalgia, but I think really it's about the feeling you create with your brand, and especially as an entrepreneur. Your company is you, especially when you're starting out, and you've got to create feelings that reverberate and echo around your presence in every room you're in, right? You got to live it, you got to breathe it, you got to eat it, and you got to share that passion with everyone that you're around, right? Right now, my latest venture is all about AI. And like, if you get in my car, my kids get really annoyed because everything I listen to is all about AI, like all the podcasts in the car,
Yep.
it's all AI stuff. And I think it's one of the most revolutionary times in our history where every business is going to be impacted by AI. And that gives me passion. Like when someone talks to me, like the CIO was talking to me, like, dude, your eyes just lit up when we are talking about AI and J's, right? Those are my two passions right now. It's like AI and J's. He's like, yeah, that's exactly right. So I think you've got to create the feeling through your passion, your personal passion. The smaller business you are, it's on you, right? And then you got to scale that culture, scale that reverberation through your team, and scale it up and leverage it.
Yeah, I think those are great points that you bring up because, when I think about topic number two, we talk about origin stories and the importance of storytelling, and you talk so much about that. You think about a company though, like how do you create that sort of backstory where people understand, like, the we started in a garage, we started out of the trunk of our cars, like how do you build that origin story where people plug in? Because you talked a lot about feelings, so I want to tug on that string a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's the lore, right? You touched on it right there. It's the lore you create around your brand. And you can write a book. We're in 2025. You can do all kinds of things. You can have a podcast.
Mhm.
You can tell stories. You can get a blog going. You can start a newsletter. You just got to share your story with anyone and everyone that'll listen to it. Now, I also think you gotta I heard this. I'm in this group called Entrepreneurs Organization, and one of my forum mates told me that the riches are in the niches, and you
Yes.
really have to focus on a niche, right?
Right.
So if you're gonna have a story and a brand and a lore, it's gonna have to be a niche, right? You're
Right.
not gonna be in 2025 and you're like, well, I make shoes. Okay, cool. That's your new brand. You make shoes. Like that's not gonna sell. It's not gonna have any
That's right.
lore. It's got no
That's right.
story, right? You can't tell a story about that. And I think you got to have really good lore, really good culture, and really good focus on what is it that's going to make that particular product you the only person in the world that can tell that story about that product and get other people excited about it.
That's right. The art of storytelling, which brings me to number three, and we've kind of touched on this. We've danced around it a little bit, but the sense of communities and then campaigns. What do I mean by that? Well, you talked about Be Like Mike. We talk about Just Do It, Bo Knows, Morris Blackman, Spike Lee. It's got to be the shoes, right? So how do you create that sort of memorable pitch, if you will, from a business that gets people excited and builds that sense of community? Because my question to you is, in absence of this great marketing budget, think about, was there a time where you had a favorite shoe or you were debating someone about what's the best version of a Jordan or Nike or other sort of shoes?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always debating on shoes. Which Jordans are the best. I'm a big fan of the fours and the threes. But there's people that are like, I only like the ones, right? So it just that alone creates this buzz around the product and hype, which you're right. You typically would need a multi-billion-dollar budget if you're trying to launch a new brand from scratch. But I do think in this 2025 era, again, with AI, I'm going to keep plugging that, but with AI, you can do so much to amplify your microphone, to get a small brand out the door. And there's tons of stories out there, like little brands taking off and getting really big on going viral. And they didn't have any marketing budget, right? They may be a guy in a garage with a video, with a cell phone, like taking one of these devices and just being like, all right, I'm going to start filming content every day. And my objective is just to get eyeballs on it. And eventually I may have a product or I may not to monetize it. But when you get that traction of you got someone following your story and your brand, you don't need a big marketing budget anymore. You need a story. You need something that's interesting that someone's willing to watch or engage with online. In our world, we don't have a big marketing budget. We started this business in 2024. It's both my partner and I's, we're serial entrepreneurs, so we've done this several times. We have a $0 marketing budget, right? We had no money because we're starting from scratch. We're just investing and hiring people, getting our office going, all that kind of stuff. We're like, we can't spend money on a bunch of marketing stuff. But what we did do is we're like, all right, we can't do that. Who's our target customer? Well, it's probably a Fortune 1,000 C-level executive at a company interested in moving the needle, right? Could be a business transformation project, could be an AI initiative. But we know we can help those people. And where are those people? Well, a lot of them live on LinkedIn, right? So we've started to intentionally do a lot of LinkedIn content and branding, and it doesn't cost us much. And I'm sure we're not the greatest at it. Like we don't know what we're doing because we haven't engaged in a professional agency, but we're doing it, right? Part of it is like you show up and you go to battle and you get better, right? So we're doing that. So I think in this age and era, JP, we can all start and launch brands with shoestring budgets, and you can do a lot these days, right? You can get on a podcast, you can get on a newsletter, you can be quoted on something, you can write an article. Becoming a thought leader on whatever it is that you're trying to get out in the market and be known for is not as hard as it used to be. You don't have to go to a big conference and pay thousands of dollars. You can do it from the beach in Miami, right? You can do it from anywhere.
No, that gives me inspiration. Yeah, let me book that ticket right now. But no, that I think what you touched on is very, very important. The barrier to entry it's much lower, but it's really about getting your message out to a community who will amplify it, who is going to be as passionate about Jordans as they are about your product. And I think about a company like Tesla now. We can put all the other stuff aside, but one of the things, without having a marketing budget and whatnot, basically targeting folks, they were able to build this as a tremendous, electric car company, by having a community of folks who value the product. So I think there's a lesson there for anyone, as well as you articulated, that get your message out there, use the tools that are available to you, build this community. And again, could you be Nike? But remember, Nike hasn't always been Nike. And so I think that's important. Now, let's talk about topic number 4, which is this notion of exclusivity with access. Okay, you touched on it with, I'll just say it here, the Birkin bags.
That's what I was. I don't. I'm like,
Yeah,
I don't know. It was
yeah.
I'm like, my wife tells me about all these things. Birkin.
But
That's
this
the
whole
one. Yeah.
notion of you're in this club of people that are like-minded, yet when the product drops, you don't always get it. So tell me, how do they make you feel like an insider without you necessarily winning all the time?
So good. I think, full disclosure, I'm a Nike shareholder also, but I think, their stock has taken a hit over the last few years. They had a big bounce post COVID, and then it kind of crashed and burned a little bit as a lot of that went away. So I think, if you look at Nike's direct digital, I'll call it a campaign, but they're going direct to the consumer, right? You used to have to go to like a Foot Locker and a store to buy all the stuff. And they're kind of reversing that a little bit, but let's take the strategy itself, right? When that happened, they started rolling out that sneakers app, and you got people excited about the story inside of the app, right? And there was a digital campaign where they took their athletes and put them inside of the app on your phone, right? Now you're seeing like Kobe and LeBron and Jordan stuff and nostalgic videos for the throwbacks, and you're seeing all that stuff on your device right there on demand, and you can engage with that. They used to do lots of little deals where they'd have like, I don't know what it was called, maybe Friday or something. They'd have a little demo set up where they would talk about the shoes that are coming out over the next few weeks. And they'd have, these sneakerheads talking about them and going through the texture and the materials and the unboxing. And all that stuff is just things that go through and create more awareness. And I think Nike has done a really good job at leveraging digital tools to do that, not just the physical billboards and the ads and the jerseys. You see all kinds of other stuff out there that's very subtle and neat, and they do really cool stuff on their products where they'll make them a little different, right? When they do this, the re-releases of products, you and I were just talking about those rare airs, and they're like certain pairs have like the gold thing, right? Like that didn't cost them anything, but like everyone knows about it. They're talking about it. Like, did you get a pair of the gold things on them? It's like just this cool sense of a story and being a part of a community because you can connect with other people. And I think human connection is one of the other things that Nike's really good at. Like I don't know another company in the world that's that good. Maybe Coca-Cola, probably pretty damn good at it also, but they are really good at creating human connection. And I think that's what the stories need to tell is the connection.
Absolutely. And so much of what you touched on was that user experience where we're not just talking about, whether or not you get to buy the product and, creating that scarcity, if you will, but this whole notion of it goes back to the anticipation. It goes back to the ability to connect. It goes back to things you can learn about the product. You think about just, anything you use. We do webinars, we do outreach, we do all these community things to help customers understand how to use our product, where to find our product, where to find like-minded individuals. You think about companies like Apple, where you got that community who jumps in and will answer your questions for you. All those sort of things are about around that access. Now, you did touch on something that was very, very important. I don't want to gloss over this, right? Because even the icons hit the headwinds, which is topic number 5. It's not all smooth sailing. And so you touched on this move away from the mom and pop boutiques to going to direct to consumers. And when you think about the culture, part of finding shoes has been the hunt, has been these rare sort of things. But when Nike has hit those headwinds, and you've seen not just the stock price, but the brand and the saturation of different shoes, and you've seen the Hokas of the world and the Unclouds, all these different, New Balance. You've seen all these different competitors rise up where Nike was traditionally a running shoe company and kind of lost ground in that space. So talk to me a little bit about how does a business bounce back from that sort of situation and reestablish their brand. And I'm going to take this opportunity to say shout out to Elliot Hill because, I've tagged him a few times on LinkedIn. So here's my shameless plug. But you bring back leaders who have an understanding of the DNA of the business. So tell me, how do you recover from those missteps as a business? Because we're not all going to get it right all the time.
Yeah, well, if we get a meeting with Elliot Hill, I'm coming. So make sure we make that happen. Yeah, I mean, I think missteps are a part of business, right? Especially entrepreneurship. And the good lesson here is even Nike, a company and brand that big, can misstep.
That's right.
And that's kind of like no pun intended, right? I mean, you think about these missteps here, and I'm a believer that that brand and that product has got staying power. Now they've got to get leadership in place. They've got to fix the culture. They got to do some work, right? But if Nike can pivot and fail, admit it, and move on, you as an entrepreneur, anybody listening to this podcast trying to start a business that's got an idea, that's thought about maybe someday doing something, but they're afraid of failure, you can do it. Like what's stopping you from taking that idea that you think is a really cool idea that's got a problem? And I'm not telling everybody to go quit their corporate jobs and go start a business because that's not for everybody. But I'm saying if you've got something that you're passionate about, and you know in your heart, your soul, you've got to take a shot. You don't want the one thing you don't want to do is when you're 85 years old, regret, right? You don't want to regret not taking that chance and taking that shot because you can always go and do what you're doing now, right? But you can't always go and undo time and go and do something epic, right? So, I think when you talk about the missteps, I think it's what you learn from them and how you get to the next success. And I do think, if you look at the Nike story, and we talked about this briefly, like people are kind of complaining right now, like, well, all the sneakers are so easily available and all the sneakers are dropping in prices. And I'm like, if you are a true I don't know, fanatic or sneakerhead, whatever you want to call it. You're not doing this to have a portfolio of shoes that go up and down. You're doing this to put them on your feet and walk around and talk to people and connect with other humans about them, right? So, we texted about that this morning. It's like these shoes are not meant to sit in boxes, right? They're meant to be worn. And I think the fact that Nike has now reversed gear a little bit, they're like, well, you know what? I feel personally like one of the things I really love is I'm wearing a pair today for you, dude. I'll show you later, but I love it when they have the Nike Air on the back on the J's. And I feel like in the last year, they've pivoted where a lot of more of them have it, right? Before was this thing, they didn't have very many of them. It was hard to get. They had the Jumpman, which I'm a fan of too, but I like the original authentic stuff better, the OG stuff. And I do believe that one of their strategic things is, all right, well, we went maybe to one extreme where it was too much rare stuff. And now we're going to make it a little more available for people. And I think it is helping them, right? Like I think people are buying stuff more and wearing stuff more, not letting it sit on a shelf or sit in some kind of fancy sneaker warehouse type, fancy store where it's selling for crazy prices aftermarket. Like they're putting products in hands of people. And I think that's getting back to the basics. Like when they first started that business, it wasn't about rare sneakers, right? The waffle thing you talked about and the Cortez and all that stuff. They were available. Like you could go get them. They weren't like going after market for crazy money. And I think maybe they got away from their core a little bit into that rare sneaker type of ambiance. So I do think the fact that now you can get them is a good thing, right? I think it's good for the stock price as an investor. I think it's good for us as consumers. Like we don't have to go and deal with crazy lines and all the drama. And it's fun to search for stuff, but like it's also fun to be able to get what you want when you want it.
Absolutely. No, those are all great points. So I think if we're recapping here, the five critical messages are: one, create that anticipation, that buzz with your business. Make your product launch an experience, because it's really about that connection, not just the widget, if you will. Number two, it's the storytelling. What's the origin? What does your business stand for? What differentiates it in the marketplace? What is your moat? Be able to tell that story and you'll build that connection. Number three, a community. It's one thing to say that you're great as a company, but it's much more powerful to have others, particularly your customers, talking about how great you are. So get those raving fans, get them excited. And then number four, it's this exclusivity with access. You're part of a club. You're part of a different type of community. It's not for everyone, but those on the inside of these ropes, if you will, we get it. And you can create that with your brand. And I think last but not least, this is a story about life as well. Number five is, as a business, you're going to hit roadblocks. Your ICP is going to change. Marketing conditions are going to change. New competitors are going to jump up into the space. How do you pivot? How do you learn from that? And when I think about Nike and their launch of, their very first basketball shoe, was not the Air Jordan, but the Air Force One that had a limited run and was killed by Nike. But it was only through the community that Nike had developed that they brought the Air Force One back. Shout out to the folks in Baltimore because they were a big market, and I'm sure New York is going to have something to say. But those are all lessons that we can learn from these big brands. And last but not least, as a bonus that you talked about, there's so much ability to have access and to get your message out there with so many tools. And because of the age we're in, we have to mention AI at least once a day. And so leverage your AI tools to be able to do those sort of things. So before we break, are there any parting shots or any bit of information you want to share to first-time founders, entrepreneurs, businesses in general in terms of how they can copy the Nike way?
Well, number one, I'm going to show you, I'm wearing my little fours here. A little
Oh,
exercise showing to you. Um, I think entrepreneurship is hard. There is no easy path. I think a lot of times people are looking for the easy path. And, there's tons of stuff on social media. The problem with social media is like everything you read online is like people are trying to sell eyeballs, right? So people will
Yeah,
show you it's easy to do this. It's very easy to go and build an audience. It's very easy to build a brand. It's very easy to do podcasts and videos, use these tools, whatever. Most of the time, my experience is that the people that are telling you how to do things are not actually doing those things. All right. So I think keep that in mind as you're out there trying to learn. Because you want to grow from people that are walking down the same path as you.
that's right.
And most of the folks that are out there that are telling you, let me teach you how to be an entrepreneur, sign up for my class, sign up for my course, read my book.
Yeah,
They're not, think about it. They're taking time away from their core business to push content related to starting something when they could be working on their business.
that's right. That's
And
right.
I think the real key is for us as entrepreneurs to find people and the community. You touched on this.
That's right.
Find your community, your people that are going to push you and elevate you to be better, right? If you stay around the same people your whole life, and I'm not knocking people that do that, but if you do that, you are going to be the same. You are going to be the same. If you want to grow and you want to pursue your passions, you want to travel, you want to get fit, whatever you want to do, like you can pick. I don't care. Like, you want to go fishing? Like I'm not a fisher, but whatever you want to do, get around those people that you could see yourself learning from and try to give back too, right? As you start learning these lessons, try to share what you learned with other people and be brutally honest, right?
Mhm.
Don't share just the good stuff. Like what we see on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn, a lot of times is the good stories.
Right.
Now, underneath all of those stories is a lot of pain and struggle and strife to
Yes.
get to where you got to,
Yes.
right? And no
Yeah.
one talks about that, right? Everyone talks about all the easy stuff. Like, oh yeah, I just signed a new customer up. Oh,
Mhm.
we had a really good customer experience story the other day. Oh,
Yeah.
we have this really good story. But I think the stories we should be telling is like, we had a customer that went sideways, right? Here's what really went down. And I think from a customer experience perspective, if you're a CX executive,
Yep.
you've got to really think about, well, how can I take that story that was really bad and make it good, right? I always tell people in the service industry, and it drives me nuts when I go to a restaurant or have a bad experience at a flight or a hotel. We love traveling.
Yeah.
And when the company doesn't do anything to go over the top to make up for it,
Right.
right? And it's not like I'm looking for something free or whatever. Like we spend money on good experiences, but if you want to build a lifelong fan and a lifelong customer, go over the top on the correction, right? So when there is a mistake, go over the top and make it better and make it right instead of just using that as an opportunity to be like, oh, Mr. Customer, I'm sorry. Well, cool. You're sorry. Great. But why don't you do something about it? Literally do something.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Not, pun intended on that one.
Just do it. So
There
I'm
you
gonna
go.
leave you all with this. So I'm gonna reach into my bag of tricks here because we always have to have, the actual product here and show
I got
that
one
to
too.
your
I'm gonna
point.
play the game too, dude. We gotta play
Exactly.
also.
To your point, this isn't just a talk. We actually are doing it and we live this experience. So if this topic has resonated with you, I want you to like, subscribe, and more importantly, drop a comment. So once again, my name is JP Dumas. Welcome. I want to say thank you very much to Dipesh for coming
For
in
having
and
me.
indulging me today with this conversation. This has been Confessions of a CX Executive, Sneakerhead Edition, and I look forward to speaking with you soon.